Welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast, where you'll hear inspirational stories, encouraging news, and in-depth interviews with authors, influencers, CEOs, and thought leaders. Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. Bold ideas, brave pursuits, boundless inspiration. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much, Holly, for joining me here today. Welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be a guest.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to talk to you today. And I know that our viewers and our listeners are definitely in for a treat. Now, before we get started, I realize that I may be introducing you to some viewers or listeners for the very first time. So, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? What makes you you?
Well, wow. So I am pretty much that feels loaded, but I am someone I very much enjoy my career. I'm an executive coach and involved with a company called LeaderSkills, which is leadership training. I am very passionate about leaving people better than I found them. And that's not just professionally, that's personally. I just don't think people do enough in this world to support each other and bring joy to each other. So that is kind of my motto. And apparently I've been that way since the day I was born, according to my parents. So that's probably the most interesting thing about me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's so interesting how when we go back and we talk to our parents about how we were as little kids, I remember my parents saying, "Oh my goodness, like sit down," or "You're just a little chatty Cathy. Like, what are you doing?" And now that I am on television and I do radio, it's kind of like the light bulb went off and said, "Oh, she was practicing." So
Yes, very much
right?
so for me as well. So yeah, I can relate.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at, that we should definitely encourage our little people and the personalities that they have. You never know who they're gonna grow up to be. I love
Absolutely.
that. I love that. Now, speaking of the changes that go on in our lives, you have made a very determined leap, if you will. And a lot of people call it a leap, a jump, or you said, you know what, we're done with that. On
Mhm.
to something new. So, in the fact that you have founded Leadership Skills, as well as Holly G Business Coaching, major leap.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you determined that it was time to perhaps set that down and pick up something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it came out of what I would say is the hardest time I've ever had professionally in my life. I was always the A plus kid. I mean, in school, I was the A plus kid, did every extracurricular, had the full scholarship to college, came out with, guns blazing, promotion in my career. And I was very comfortable, and that was felt like my identity almost at a certain point. And then I got promoted to a position that I was struggling for the first time in my life. I made the jump from being an on-site manager to a regional manager, and was, I was just spinning my wheels, miserable, and didn't know what I wasn't doing right. And I had a lot of people around me, like my direct supervisor, other people in that company that were just like, well, you need to dig in, or, the numbers aren't good. And I'm like, those are all symptoms. What's the problem? Help me, So I didn't get it. So I ended up going to the CEO of that company at the time and said, I think I need an executive coach. I've heard of them. I'd like to try it. What do you think? And I don't know to this day what made that man believe in me, but he's like, you know what? We've never done it and it's a lot of money, but you've done well heretofore. So let's try it. And that's when I met Nan O'Connor, who is the creator of the content of Leader Skills. And I'm telling you what, within 6 months, my life changed. Like, she just spent all that time going through things with me that you don't learn when you're young, like
Yeah.
self-awareness, or, how you need to be self-aware to not negatively impact others, just things like empathy, curiosity, things that just don't come naturally to a lot of us. And she completely changed my life and made it a much less problem-free world for me. So that experience is really where it started ticking, because that difference she made for me felt it was just huge. And I think it goes back to me like wanting to help people and leave them better than I found them, that it kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And then, I ended up moved all the way up to COO and loved that, but realized I wasn't really having the impact one on one with people like I used to. So that was when I'm like, you know what? I think I can make this change. And I ended up quitting corporate America, went back to school to become an executive coach. And in that process, as I was building up my client list, Nan called one day and said, I need help with LeaderSkills. And so that's how I ended up involved with her. And it's been so rewarding because I can help a lot more people more quickly that way as well. So it was definitely scary though, but I can tell anyone that's listening, if you feel like it's the bottom for you, I promise you, out of that always there can always be amazing things that happen if you're willing to just, take a step back and really think about what's right for you and your family.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing. And on so many different levels, because I hear that you did exactly what we see on social media, right? Sometimes you just have to do it scared.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to walk by faith and not by sight, right?
Yes.
Whichever level, whichever
Yes.
side of the coin, you need to understand that
Mhm.
it has to be done. And you were willing to do that. The courage that it takes sometimes to become our best selves, to be the person that we were always meant to be. If it were easy, if it were always comfortable, then everyone would do it. So
Mhm.
there really is that refining process that we must go through in order to get there. So bravo for
Thank you.
for stepping out. That is awesome. I love it. I love it. Now, I want to kind of throw two words out there to you that seems like they have become four-letter words over the past few years. And one is time management. When I say that, the eye rolls that I get, uh, not that, Dr. Angela, right? Like those types of comments. And the word delegation. That seems to strike fear into people as well. Now, we know that as leaders, as good leaders, those are two things that we have to deal with. Now, of course, I want to ask you, how do you help people with that? But I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. The same way I would tell someone to buy the book, of course, full answers and all of that will be included in any packages or services that one could purchase with you to really have a more one on one experience. But generally speaking, how do we deal with time management and delegation?
Well, those are two very important things. So I'll take each one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, with time management, we are so oblivious, I think, to the fact that we really are all bad at it. And we are not really trained on how to do it well. If you don't have a process, you need one. And one thing we teach at LeaderSkills and my coaching practice is, get a system, whether it's Trello, which is a free online program you can use that has an app on your phone. You can use it on your laptop. You can create all kinds of lists on what you need to do, when to do it. You can organize. And I always tell people organize it by what you must do and by what you want to do. And then things you're waiting on others for, because that's something that doesn't really need to sit on your list. You can sit it off to the side if it's not something you can do anything about. And then a focus five, which is what are the five things that have to be done right now that really need my attention? Because if you are looking at that whole to do list, it is going to be overwhelming and you're going to be spinning your wheels and just not be very effective. So we really push for that focus five. And then, from that to do list, it does lead into delegation, but I'll get to that in a minute. But keeping that list is critical. But beyond that, what I do tell a lot of my clients, one of the first things I have them do is a time study. And I just have them anything they do, throw it up on the calendar. Like if you get distracted, if someone calls you, if it takes 10 minutes out of your day, make a note of it. And I find it easiest just to throw it on your Outlook calendar so that you can kind of sum it all up at the end. But if you do that for 2 weeks, I think almost all of us would be surprised by where we are spending our time and what's pulling us away from what we really need to do. And maybe realize we do have some extra time in there on something that maybe isn't worth whether it's personal or professional, there are some things we do that we realize when we look at it on paper, well, that's silly. Why am I doing that? So, I mean, that I looked at mine and I was like blown away when I did it the first time. So, those are two things. Have a system, and there's tons of them out there. But again, I always recommend Trello. I think it's easiest and it's free. And anyone can pick it up very quickly, but then also a time study to really understand what you're doing with your time now. And then the last tip on time management is just, if you want to get it done, you better calendar it. And that's not just your task. That's
Yeah.
like, if you're a leader, you need to have strategic time too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's once a month where you take an hour on your calendar and say, okay, I'm going to think about all the strategic things I want to do, and maybe and push those forward. So that's important as well, because if you don't calendar it, it's likely not going to happen. So that's my time management.
Absolutely. Now, before you talk about
Yeah.
delegation,
Mhm.
I have to agree with you so much there. That one, with realizing where we wasting our own time, right? Like,
Mhm.
what are the little things that we are doing where it's kind of like when you say something out loud, you can hear how it truly sounds, as opposed
Mhm.
to it sounds great in your head, and then
Yeah.
you say it out loud and you go,
Exactly.
oh wow, no wonder they didn't understand, or no wonder they're having a hard time with that, right? So you are so right there. I remember I went to um an event, and it was a bunch of leaders in there, and they were talking about time management, and everyone, the facilitator said, everyone bring up your calendars and let's see, what we're all doing here. And my little section, it was, we were all little peas in the pod. We had things color coded, we had stuff blocked off,
Mhm.
and we're sitting there looking at each other going, good job, good
Yeah.
job. And it's like, wait, is your red like red hot, like to do right now? I was like, yeah. I was like, I do red, yellow, green. She's like, yes, I do red, yellow, green. And the lady at the end was like, I do ABC. And we're like, that's fine too. Stay on the row.
Sure. Hey,
But
it works for you, it works.
what works for you works. So I just want to say, absolutely, please get something and write it all down. People laugh sometimes because it's like, do you really have spend time with family on your calendar? And it's like, absolutely. It's not necessarily to remind me, but it is to make sure that no one else impedes upon my family time,
Mhm.
because this is my time to spend with them. So I love that. Delegation, the other word that seems to make people feel something not
Yes,
always positive.
yes,
Let's talk
absolutely.
about delegation.
So I think the biggest thing with delegation is thinking about it with a different lens. A lot of people, I think, when I first start working with them, they look at it as things they have to get off their plate, and that is true to a degree. You want to get things off your plate so you can focus on what you're being paid to do or what you need to do. But in reality, it is so much more than that. It is about giving people under you or that work with you or in other areas, how to learn to do things. You're going to grow them that way as well. So it is very critical in growing people to really teach them those things, train them on those things, because what do we all want to do? Take a vacation and not be bothered, right? And how does that happen? By training your teams to handle everything when you're gone. And how does that happen? By delegating. So it's a piece of that. But also on the flip side, your team senses mistrust. If you don't trust them to delegate to them, they will sense that, and they'll feel, like lesser than, in effect, like, well, they don't trust me to do that, or I'm over here just twiddling my thumbs and they're overwhelmingly busy, but they won't let me help in any way. That does not send a good message to them. And people like to be challenged. There's plenty of studies out there, but if you are not constantly being invested in as an employee, if they're not training you on things and growing you and developing you, then you're likely not going to stay there. You will turn over very quickly at a company if you do not feel valued in that way. So I think delegation has a lot to do with those things, and really changing how you think about it, I think, has a lot to do with helping make you better at it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that we're starting to see that more with our younger generation. in that they are much more vocal about what they believe is true or isn't true. Now, that might be a little bit of a rub for some folks, but I think the open and honest communication that they want to have, they want to step up, they want to be utilized, and they want to feel like they are a part of the team as
Mhm.
opposed to just employee number
Yeah,
next.
like a cog in the wheel. Yeah, exactly.
Right, right.
Exactly.
So I love that you are having that conversation with people as well, and we do need to be reminded to value each person that is at the table. I love that. Now, another thing that you talk about is accountability. Now, many times we have conversations on accountability and we're thinking only when someone has done something negative, like they've dropped the ball. And
Yep.
now it's we need to talk and we have to talk about
Yes.
accountability. But accountability is something that can also be preventative care or something
Mhm.
that happens in the forefront, right? So, with that being said, how do we shift our mindset or how do we build into our structure and our culture that positive accountability before it becomes a negative?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's important to have check-ins, regular scheduled check-ins, depending on who it is and their needs and what projects they're doing. It could be once a week, it could be twice or every 2 weeks or once a month. But if you have that regular scheduled time with that person and you have to stick to it, you cannot reschedule on them because that sends a message of you don't matter as much as something else. But have
Mm-hmm.
that meeting and just get it. Make sure you have kind of a outline for how that meeting goes, things you're going through and talking about. So they get in the habit of having conversations with you on a regular basis where you're checking in with them on all the things they're doing on a regular basis. And that way you don't have to have a random phone call saying we need to talk. Because then they're going to know, right?
Right.
It's bad. And that never feels good. And the amount of stress that creates for someone until that meeting then is overwhelming. And as a leader, usually it overwhelms you too, because you're like, oh, now I have to go have this conversation and you just don't you haven't taken that time to talk to them regularly, develop that trust with each other and that comfort that you get when you talk on a regular basis about things. So that's the first piece. And then second of all, in that meeting, you should really be talking about, deadlines, projects, and it should always be part of that agenda to say, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we want to do better?
Yeah.
And that way you're always giving that feedback. And I think the biggest thing with accountability is people want to make it punitive, and it should not be punitive. It should always be about growth. I mean, as a leader, I was certainly not perfect, and I made mistakes all the time. And my boss, I'm not saying he liked it, but he allowed it for me to grow. And we have to do the same with our direct reports and with people we're helping grow. We have to allow some room for error. And when they do make mistakes, because they will, it's your job to protect them, to help them be better at it, but also to anyone above that sees whatever the mistake was, say, hey, you know what? They're new, they're learning. We're going to get through this together. Because if you don't do that, they're going to trust you less and they're going to be less likely to take chances and they're going to not feel as good about it. And again, lead to turnover. So it's
Yeah.
very important to do it that way.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for saying the other side. So many times we just get the information from like the employee side, like, oh goodness, it's the same as when your spouse or your mate or your parents say, wait until you get home, or,
Yeah.
we need to talk later today.
Yes.
And you
Mhm.
might as well just go home because you're not being productive at work
Yep.
because you're dreading the conversation.
Mhm.
But very seldom do we hear that the person who has to have that conversation with you doesn't want to have that conversation with you either. Like they're
Mhm.
not looking forward, they're not
Yeah.
fired up to talk to that person, right?
Mhm.
Because they know that they have to be the bad guy in that moment. Now, sure, there are some personality types that are able to deal with it, that can compartmentalize it, keep it
Mhm.
professional and all of that. But there are so many more that are just they need a hot tea
Yeah.
before the talk as well. So
Yes, very much so.
so know that it's a little kind of even there as well. I love that. Now, you said a really good thing there, and that is about the mistakes. If we because we are human, there are going to be some mistakes that happen, and we need to be aware of that. Every day is not going to be a perfect day. When you talk about team building and how to make sure that our teams are the best that they can be, the question of what to do when there are mistakes, do you get that question often? If so, again, I know don't divulge it all, but what is one thing that perhaps you can do to help keep your team going on the right track or keep it positive if a mistake
Mhm.
has been made?
Curiosity, one word. I think that's the biggest thing. You have to get curious. Why did the mistake happen? Don't
Yeah.
focus on necessarily the mistake itself, like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, this mistake. Instead, say, hey, this, I noticed this or this happened, whatever it was. I'm curious, tell me how you did it. I want to go through the process and just get curious in all the ways you can so that you really understand the how it happened and make it more about that versus, again, just focusing on you did something wrong. That doesn't feel good to anybody. It's amazing what curiosity and empathy can do in those situations. And just, we all make assumptions so
Yeah.
often based on our own narrative in our head. And we usually have no clue what the heck happened. We know what we would have done if that we made that mistake, but we don't know why they did. So curiosity is critical, I think, to finding not only the right solutions to help grow that person and help them, but also to make sure everybody feels positive and walks away feeling good about it.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. And I could not agree with you more. And as someone who talks about empathetic leadership all the time, I cannot reiterate enough how, if we just pause, slow down just a minute to, as you said, check in with those that are members, team leaders, a part of the team, whatever name you want to give to them,
Mhm.
and really find out what's going on in their world. It makes all the difference in the world with the culture that you create and how even those people are able to interact with each other. If someone is going through um, a divorce, or they are the caretakers for their parents, as many are now a part of the sandwich generation. There's so many
Mhm.
things that are going on in people's lives. And if we're aware of it, what can we do to help let that person know that we see them, that we care about them? We still want them to do their job, but we also realize you're a human being that just probably needs a little bit of flexibility where flexibility can be given. And what
Absolutely.
a beautiful way that they will then say, I'm not leaving here because they care
Mhm.
about us, right?
Exactly.
They
Exactly. It's
care.
amazing.
Thank you for allowing me to have a long lunch on
Mhm.
Tuesdays because that's the day I take care of my mom or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you are so right there. Now, my last question for you is about hybrid workplaces. I think that over the past few years, in part due to the pandemic happening, we realized that work can be done from home. Imagine that, that there really and truly were people who were able to um, keep that lane open and be productive people. We noticed that with a lot of businesses, their numbers did not drop, that in some cases they either maintained or improved slightly because people were able to do what they needed to do in the way in which they needed to do it. With that being said, are you seeing any new trends when it comes to hybrid work, or are you seeing that there's a projection for us to return more so to more traditional ways of doing business?
Well, I do think that there is a push by, different leaders to try to get people to come back. But I think obviously there's a lot of rub right now going on there. And the biggest thing that I've seen, even in talking with clients and talking with just colleagues, is that people want them all back in the office because they want to see them and know they're working. And I think it's something that people have to wrap their brain around. If you can't trust them, whether you see them or not, they shouldn't be working for you. And that's the first thing. And second of all, I keep hearing really silly things like between every, article and news story, it's over and over again. I keep hearing, well, they're probably doing laundry and they're, taking a long lunch. Let's just ask this question. So what? So what? Like, is it about the results Or is it about how they get to the results? Because I'll tell you all day long, the moment you say, hey, I need all these things done, and you just let them go do it, however they're going to do it, as long as you get the results you want, and obviously morally correct ways, those kinds of things, but without breaking any laws. But as long as the result you need is provided, so what if they maybe do laundry a little bit in the middle of the day because they need to take their brain offline for a minute to think through things? Or maybe they need a little bit of a flex schedule, but they're working different hours. And I mean, I don't know how many times we've seen this come out where people that are working from home are giving more time, not less, because they're not commuting. Now their office is at home, readily available. If they have downtime, they're going to go do that a little more. And they're happier doing it. They're more productive doing it because they want to focus and then get done as soon as they can so they can go do what they want to do, right? If you make them stay chained to their desk 8 to 5 because that makes you feel better, it actually is really working against you, and it's the opposite of what you're trying to do. So I think that's kind of a lot, but that's all the different things I'm hearing, seeing for the most part. But I think it's a great shift personally as a coach. I think people working from home, there are some people who need that person time. They need to be in that environment. My husband's the first one that'll tell you he has to be in the office because he claims it's his ADHD dragging him all over the place, but I think he just needs that focus of sitting next to people. But the majority of people don't need that, and we're just better off without it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the model served its purpose for its day and for
Hmm.
its time, but the world can run for many of us on our iPhones, right?
Yes,
We are planning things out and the world continues to spin thanks to our wonderful phones. So we don't have to continue to be so locked in. I think like you said, it is great for the people who want, but for the people who can, it's about the productivity.
absolutely.
And when it comes down to the bottom line, I think people are sometimes perhaps a little frightened to say, "Look at the numbers, man! Look at the
Yeah.
numbers!"
Yes.
Right? And it's like
Yes.
I'm home in my jammies. I mean, not me personally, but it's like if I'm home in my jammies and I am making it happen for
And
you, and the bottom line is the bottom line,
being that,
and
yeah.
profit is jammies, it is. And it's
Mhm.
so funny because I'm a night owl. So there are many, many times that a workshop or something that I have created has been because it's 2 a.m. and be it that I had a latte a little bit too late, or or I just simply couldn't turn my brain off for that particular day. Something was created, and because of that opportunity for someone else to be involved was created in that. So I think that flexibility really can be a
Absolutely.
win-win for everyone. I love it. I love it. Well, Holly, thank you so much for coming on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast, and spending some time with me today. I have enjoyed my conversation with you. Now, of course, we know that your information is right here on the screen, but those that may be listening in, if someone wants to reach out to you, if they want to follow you on socials, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I would say the best way is the LeaderSkills website has some really awesome tips you can sign up for. You get one every 2 weeks. Nan has crafted them herself. They are amazing. And I think that is a great way to get some great information from us and some helpful tips. But beyond that, just emailing is the easiest way. I'm not a big social media person. I can do it. I've done it. I was big into marketing for a while, but the rewards of that was exhausting. So judgment, you can throw it at me, but just not my jam. But yeah, I would say email, and then the website obviously is the best thing.
I love it. Thank you again for coming on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really was enjoyed being here.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.